Lent is this season that comes right before Easter. And traditionally, this is a time of preparation of 40 days and nights.
The Spirit led Jesus up into the wilderness so that the devil might tempt him. After Jesus had fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, he was starving.
Sheltering in place for these past couple weeks during Lent, thinking about Jesus alone in the desert for 40 days and nights, it connects with me in a way that normally it just doesn't. So often people think of Christianity as a set of beliefs, a set of ideas that you accept. But it's much more than that. The faith of Jesus is practiced. Last week we talked about the spiritual practice of meditation. And today we're looking into the idea of fasting. Now, most years during Lent, this year too, in fact, I observe a meat fast. I don't eat any meat except for fish. And I know some of you will sometimes observe a carbon fast, and that's great. There are all sorts of ways to fast. All of us are to some degree doing a people fast right now. We're separated from one another. I miss you. I miss the staff at Einstein's. I miss having Miles as friends over and making them cookies. Human beings are social animals, and even the most introverted among us require a measure of connection. It's essential to life, like shelter and food. The idea of fasting from food is incredibly ancient. It has been practiced by religions around the world for thousands of years.
In tradition, there was the story of God instructing Moses in the wilderness. Moses was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He didn't eat any bread or drink any water. He wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. There was the story of David fasting after the death of King Saul and his son. David grabbed his clothes and ripped them, and all his soldiers did the same. They mourned and cried and fasted until evening for Saul, his son Jonathan, the Lord's army, and the whole house of Israel, because they had died by the sword. Brave Queen Esther called for her people to fast as she prepared her plan to attempt to save the nation from genocide. Go, gather all the Jews who are in Susa, and tell them to give up eating to help me be brave. They aren't to eat or drink anything for 3 whole days, and I myself will do the same, along with my female servants. Then, even though it's against the law, I will go to the king, and if I am to die, then die I will. And as Christ's church came together, fasting was a spiritual discipline expected of church leaders. Paul and Barnabas told the church, if we are to enter God's kingdom, we must pass through many troubles. They appointed elders for each church. With prayer and fasting, they committed these elders to the Lord in whom they had placed their trust.
Fasting is such a concrete, it's a visceral spiritual discipline. And with all the fasting that has been going on over the centuries, I guess I was surprised to think that I didn't fast. I didn't even think of fasting until I was in my 30s. In fact, honestly, the whole idea of fasting kind of didn't make any sense to me. What good could come of depriving yourself of something essential? I'd hear about people in the Bible fasting, but it seemed like something that people did back then. Maybe I thought that people fasted because there was just less food available. I don't know. I just didn't get fasting. Then I participated in my first 30-hour famine. That's a national youth program of fasting and service. And it goes like this. You stop eating at lunch on a Friday. And then over the evening, you get together with friends and you do a bunch of activities learning about global food insecurity. Then overnight, you sleep in boxes, and usually it's outside. Back in my Fargo days, that usually meant sleeping in the snow. And then on the Saturday morning, you and your friends, you go and you work at places like Harvesters, helping to provide food for people in your community. And while you're doing that, I'm going to just tell you, dear God, right about 3 p.m., people would get so cranky. You feel weak. Most Americans have never actually known true hunger, even in a controlled situation like a fast. And it's amazing how quickly your body begins to feel the effects of a fast. Then at 6 p.m. on that Saturday, we in the 30-hour family, we would break the fast. And the idea is that your friends and your family would bring out your favorite dish to a potluck, and you'd celebrate with a meal, and then you'd debrief the experience. Over the past few years, our Colonial Church community has shared a meal with our Islamic neighbors through the Dialogue Institute during the month of Ramadan. And that's a month of fasting where Muslims refrain from eating from dawn till dusk each day. And a few years back, there was a couple of young women who were at the breakfast dinner. And they told me about what Ramadan meant to them personally, what it meant to them spiritually. They told me that the fast causes you to realize how tenuous your own personal strength is. How important it is to have others going through that experience of feeling weak with you. How it brings you together. And how the experience of breaking the fast with friends means so much. And how the presence of God is in all of it. This really affected me. What these young women shared with me from their spiritual practice, it deepened mine. When you are fasting from food, it doesn't take long before you really start to feel it. The physical and the spiritual effects are potent. They bridge the gap between body and soul. Months ago, when I started thinking about the spiritual practice of fasting and thinking about Lent, I had no idea that we would be where we are at this particular moment, that I would be talking to you through the lens of a camera. I had no idea that we'd all be observing a people fast. And like fasting from food, you feel it. There are potent spiritual and emotional effects as we are apart. And I don't know about you, but one of the most difficult things that I am finding is that I don't know how long we're going to have to keep going. And it made me think about the stories of Jesus and Moses fasting in the wilderness, their wilderness, for 40 days. Did they know that their time of trial would be over? What does that mean? Does it give us the strength to get through? One of the things that experiencing a food fast can teach you is how wonderful the sensation of taste is when you break the fast. How delicious bread can be, a simple piece of bread can be. How wonderful the wings at Q39 taste on Easter afternoon. I miss you. Each day I'm taking a copy of a page of our church directory, and I pray for each person on the page. I pray especially for those in our church community who are involved in health or nursing care right now. And I cling to hope, because every fast is broken. And the day will come when this is too. The day will come when we are able to be together again, and it's going to feel so good. How a simple coffee over Einstein's will be just wonderful. What had been our normal life will seem like a beautiful gift. The day will come when this fast will break. we will be back together. And I say that as a church community, when that happens, we have a big party. Until then, what I want you to know, and what I want God's Spirit to help you feel, is that you are not alone. That you are loved. That you are held in prayer. And that the day will come when this present darkness is lifted. Will you pray with me? God of the generations before and who is with us here now, be with us, even when the stress of this moment could cause our hearts to fear, and instead give us faith. Help us trust that this present darkness will break, and even more, show us again how when this time of wilderness fasting is over, how sweet and wonderful life will taste. Give us hope that will see us through. Amen.